The Art Center inspires creativity and contributes to
community well-being
through equitable access to
and engagement with visual arts.
We collaborate to offer exhibitions,
learning opportunities, artist development,
and cultural events centered on
art, artists, and art enthusiasts in the greater Corvallis area.
Hi, my name is Claire Elam. I am the Artist Accelerator Program Director at the Art Center. I'm here today with Jessica Rehfield. Jessica, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, no, definitely. My name's Jessica Rehfield, as you mentioned. I'm one of the former Artist Accelerator Program artists with the Arts Center, where you are the program director, right, for that program. And I participated in the 2022 year cohort. So as such, I am an invited artist for the Evolution of Practice exhibit at the Arts Center, which we just installed.
Yeah, it was so exciting to see you guys all together installing from all 5 years of the program. It was really special.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you, if you wouldn't mind, telling me a little bit about your work and yourself?
Well, the work that I have in the Evolution of Practice show is a continuation of the work that I was making during the Artist Accelerator program, in that during the AAP, I was working on these Yiddish language book illustrations because I was composing at the same time this Yiddish book. I've been studying Yiddish as a heritage language for myself during the pandemic. And the project that I had introduced was to write this book and then make the illustrations about heritage issues for Ashkenazi Jewish people. So the Yiddish language book is what I was working on during the Artist Accelerator program, and that led into further research. I had already researched Jewish American histories and where people came from when they migrated to the United States. So these two large-scale paintings that I have in the Evolution of Practice exhibition are based on further research that I conducted about anti-Semitic waves of violence happening pre-World War II that I feel are sort of overlooked as a reason that Jewish people migrated away from Europe. And the two paintings also combine elements that relate the parallel histories of trauma experienced by Jewish and queer people when our bodies are sort of the site of violence and attacks, and with recent increases in transphobia and transmisogyny and violence against queer people in the form of legislation passed to limit people's rights and privileges. It was a way for me to meditate on these parallel histories of traumatic experience from a Jewish perspective, of being ousted for being Jewish from different lands, and also being queer and embodying that kind of terror and violence as a site in your body. So the subject matter may have deepened and intensified a little bit from writing a children's book in Yiddish.
Quite a bit, I would say. That's having now seen the paintings in person and how large they are. I think that it is quite a statement that you're making just in size and in addition to the concepts behind it in your commentary surrounding it.
Totally.
So you're currently exhibiting at the Evolution of Practice at the Art Center. We will also have an exhibit going on in conjunction with that through the Footwise window, which I'm very excited about. Will you talk a little bit about kind of the idea of an evolving practice? I've seen your work from the last couple of years. And I know you have a long history of making work and kind of where you might see your practice going in the future, or really what the idea of an evolving practice and kind of what that means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I have experienced a period of growth in the past year. Definitely has evolution of practice really forefront for the different ways that I'm approaching making work. Like, for instance, with the AAP, I was down in the studio and doing my artist painter thing, which is very concentrated on like late night painting sessions, and sort of insularly looking at this subject matter that's very important to me personally, that I'm hoping will also reach other people. And with the AAP work, with the Yiddish children's book, a lot of people did respond to that. And with the exhibition that we had, that was a really great opportunity for me to interface with public, a perception of my work, and to see people's reactions when they looked at this matzo ball book. And people were reacting and responding very personally to that, actually, when we had a lot of people come through for the art walk. So from that, I actually worked with some different materials in sort of a similar idea to have people come into a studio space during a residency that I did with Salem Art Association just after the Artist Accelerator program. It was not just, but it was the same year. It was September 2022. I started this residency, and it was with materials that I don't typically work with. I was using prefabricated flags, and I had proposed this open studios idea where my work would be in a gallery space that people walk through when they visit the Salem Art Association. So kind of combining that work studio with the experience that I had with the Corvallis Art Walk, where people could visit and ask questions and find out about the work in process. But the work that I was making, it was on the floor. It was a giant flag made out of these 12 separate flags, 12 individual pride flags that represent identities of myself and my wife. And the pride flag was a space for conversation. So jumping from just making in a studio with traditional art materials, I really worked into a space of social practice, which involved conversations with people. I had a lot of really enlightening conversations with folks who had never seen some of the pride flags I was working with, or who had never maybe directly spoken with a queer person about what queer identities are. We had some really open conversations, for even hours. Sometimes people would stay and talk with me about their personal connection to someone who is out and queer, or family members who have just come out. And the flag was displayed in this exhibition with photos from my wedding, our July 2022 wedding, that showed our flags that I had constructed a chuppah for our wedding out of 2 pride flags. And it was really a chance for people to identify with us through those wedding photos. So there was this whole aspect to that work that amplified what I am trying to do, both with the Yiddish workbook or children's book, the 2 large paintings that are in the Evolution of Practice show, and this artist residency is really about getting people to relate to the identities that I am presenting and humanize them, which goes back to that trauma for queer and Jewish people. We've been dehumanized so many times, and it's happening more and more regularly in really public spaces. So I'm starting to see the power in making work that helps hopefully alleviate that distance and the dehumanization or othering of some people for other people who may never have a chance to, in their normal, regular day-to-day life, interact with someone who represents those identities of queer and or Jewish. And then on that note, I've actually begun, I will have another residency coming up in May. So just around the corner, where I will be returning to making paintings and sketching and drawing on surfaces that will become paintings. about trans bodies, the beauty of trans bodies, connected with the beauty in nature. So that residency is very exciting to me because I will be working with the subject matter that I've kind of honed in on recently, things that I really need to communicate publicly to an audience about the beauty and the humanity of queer figures and people in culture, and our beauty in a way that hopefully will be communicated by the materials and the media that I work with.
That's an interesting addition to your practice from where you were when I first met you. One question popped into my head, and then we'll jump to another question. But for the 12 flags that you were using, was there a reason that you decided on 12? Was it like total size or specific?
Yeah. Excuse me. Yes, it was actually very practical. It was like, okay, is this the shape of the flag that I want? And then also how big it was. The resulting flag ended up being, some of the flags are overlaying or overlapping. So it's kind of a mosaic of flags. There's not just like one flag, end to end for the entire flag, because that would have made it at least 30 feet long. But this flag still, with the overlapping and the composition that I decided on, ended up coming in at 14 feet by 8 feet. So it's very much physically larger than I am. It was way too big physically for the room that it was displayed in. And that ended up affecting the way that I could display it, even though I really enjoy the way that it ended up being displayed. It was kind of hung from one point, and it looked like it was cascading down onto the floor. But you couldn't really, in that display, see all of the flags. They were kind of in this melange, and I would really enjoy displaying it on full, in full glory, completely unfurled. But I could have gone further. I could have included more identity flags. But these flags also represent my identities that I identify with and the identities my wife identifies with. For example, I had a Jewish pride flag. I also had a genderqueer flag and a bigender flux flag, as well as the trans flag, the bisexual flag, the progress pride flag. There's an entire spate of identities that we inhabit and embody. And the original intention for this flag was to have it displayed outside of my home on a flagpole that we inherited with the house that we're living in. It has no flags. So that was the intent, but it is big enough that it deserves to be fully experienced. And I'm hoping to find a place to do that and a space to exhibit it so that everyone can see the intersecting flags. And that's another aspect, is that it is our identities that I chose to work with, but it's not supposed to only be a flag for myself and my wife. It is a symbol that I constructed, that there are so many gender and sexuality identities that we deserve representation, and that this flag is hopefully something that people who don't see their identities represented can look at and say, oh, hey, a giant flag. It doesn't have to be that they specifically identify with each of the identities represented, but the idea that there are these identities and that you can be represented.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So jumping sort of sideways from there, and I think I know some of the answer here, but you tend to work a lot with concepts and conceptual work given visual life. But what is the importance of craft, and how does that balance with the importance of concept for you and your work?
Yeah, that is a really great question. I do have a background as a painter. I have training and, pardon me. Oh, that was a political campaign for banning assault rifles. Wonderful. Anyway, I have training. I do have training. I have a master's degree in painting and drawing, bachelor's degree in studio arts, long history of using highly controlled substances for art making, as in there is a specific way to use them. And I like to experiment with that. So I've always had a bit of a tension or a complicated relationship with craft and the idea of craft in making work using materials that are considered to be fine art materials. I've always liked to ride the edge of using them incorrectly. But I also really enjoy painting. Painting is one of my loves, and it's the way that I express myself the best is through painting. So craft for me is a jumping off point, but concept as in the idea of helping revitalize a language that is endangered, or reaching out to people to evoke emotions about complicated concepts. That really drives what I choose to make. So craft, I think the craft of the materials and the time that you spend using them and making something to a specific degree, it isn't the conceptual basis of my work, as for some painters, paint is the conceptual basis of their work. But I use paint as a medium to convey concepts about social justice and identity and political questions that I feel are overlooked or deserve more attention and contemplation, like who gets to be represented and why. And that is a good example of why I chose to work with flags for this last project. They were prefabricated flags, and there was a certain element of craft that I had to call upon in my construction of this flag, backing it with the material that I had to research and ask questions for guidance about how to use different materials in kind of a craft practice of learning from others who are senior in using a specific medium, like sewing techniques. So I do invest some time into trying to learn about any medium that I'm going to work with. And I can bring my own level of craft to specific media, but concept is the more driving factor, I guess, just because it is a way that I work out things that I want to understand and that I want to have a dialogue about with people who are viewing work. Yeah, it's complicated. I guess the other thing is that I did go to, I got my master's degree with Oregon College of Art and Craft. So honestly, this is a conversation that became very present. And, you know, we even had that conversation about our degrees. My degree is a master's in craft, in drawing and painting. So there was always this question, how do you communicate what craft means outside of a craft context? But for me, it really does have to do with refining the ability to communicate concepts using different materials. But there's also, I do like to spend time with cultivating images using painting as a craft, in a craft basis, like the craft of painting and the use of oil media is, I think, where I get the most into the craft of the materials, because that's a medium that it's really possible to do really amazing things with visually, with oil paint and with other paint mediums. So the farthest I would go in my work using craft as a basis is probably in painting. but I always tend to veer back toward using it to communicate a concept like pride in being Jewish. That was what my matzo ball book is about. So I used the craft of painting in service to that idea, if that makes sense. But the painting series that I will be beginning soon, the Trans Bodies series, it is my intention to free myself to use painting as a medium so that I can channel that beauty that I am hoping to express within that series, by leaning into the medium and using the methods that are possible within paint to communicate a concept of beauty, like exquisite beauty in nature and in bodies that is elevated and assisted by the use of the material.
Well, I'm very curious to see your new series. I think, especially when painting bodies, oil paint in particular has such a unique quality of representing human skin, and just that like supple and glow to it. It, all the greats. That's why we have so many images and portraits, is this unique quality of oil paint. Thank you so much. If you have anything else to add, especially about the evolution of practice, you're welcome to here for just a second. But I wanted to thank you for joining me in this interview, and I can't wait to see everybody together at the reception on May 12th.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have conversations with people about where their work has gone to. It really is a very diverse body of work, and the work that I saw in the gallery while we were setting up is really exciting, and how it played off of each other's work, but everything is really distinct. So I'm really excited to hear from other artists. And I did want to mention just that even though I said I will be using oil paint, I might not be using it in the right way. In my new series of paintings, they will be based on photographs that I've taken of the ocean, seaweed, and my wife's body, with her permission, completely, totally. She loves being my muse. So there will be some utilization of materials in a way that it might not be expected for oil paint, but I'm really excited to have that lushness that you mentioned. And so hopefully I'll be able to show these works in the future and be able to have people come and appreciate the natural beauty of people who are transgender.
I'm looking forward to it. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to TAC Makes. This is a new creative project at the Arts Center, and I hope you enjoy our learning curve as much as we do. You can find more episodes on YouTube and Spotify and on our website, theartscenter.net. That's arts with an S.